Welcome to Hot Topics in International Trade, brought to you by Braumiller Law Group and Braumiller Consulting Group.
Hi, this is Bob Brewer with the Braumiller Law Group, as well as Braumiller Consulting Group. I'm joined once again with our new Senior Associate Attorney, Kerry Wang.
Hi, Bob.
Hey, today's topic's going to be reasonable care. And I was just delving into it a little bit. I thought I'd use a little AI. I was impressed with some of the definition that it gave me. This thing goes back to the Customs Modernization Act that some of you might have caught me discussing that with Robert Stein, our new VP of Consulting. Catch that podcast out there on YouTube, Spotify, and our website. But basically what we're talking about is the relationship between CBP and importers and the improving of data, which is a big deal here. So I wanted to jump right in with you, Kerry, and kind of, with this relationship, can you explain the concept of reasonable care in the context of importing goods into the United States?
Absolutely, Bob. First of all, I'm really interested to hear what AI comes up with. Sometimes they give you a lot of key concepts. They can be good, but I think more importantly, there is really a definition to reasonable care. There is no one-size-fits-all answer to explain what the reasonable care is. Right. So reasonable care is a fundamental expectation set in the MOD Act, as you mentioned. Yep. It's basically Customs is telling importers, hey, importers, when you bring goods into the United States, you need to be do your homework. You need to be spot on. Tell me the right information. Mm-hmm. You need to tell me the right classification, value, country origin, among other entry information. And importers are required to exercise a certain level of diligence and accuracy when they engage in importing activities. So that's what reasonable care is. Mm-hmm. But the reason I'm saying there's no one-size-fits-all answer is it really depends on the circumstances and the activities involved. You have to do a case-by-case analysis to determine if importer has demonstrated a reasonable care or not. Mm-hmm. So you also talk about the shift, the transition, the relationship between the CBP and the importer. So CBP has many publications, which we call informed compliance publication. They have one on reasonable care, where CBP further explained the reason for reasonable care and the underlying message of the reasonable care, as well as a consequence of failure to exercise reasonable care. They also have some examples, some questions to help importers to self-assess if they have exercised reasonable care. Mm-hmm. So that is a good publication. I would recommend anyone importing business to go to rate the reasonable care. Mm-hmm. I can give you some examples of what are considered not lacking of reasonable care. For example, you do wild guesses on the classification. You are importing ball bearings, but you classify them on sport equipment. Or you're utilizing special provision, you entered as agriculture agriculture equipment duty-free, but it turned out those goods are for amusement park. So those are definitely examples of lacking reasonable care.
Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, I always look back at when we're in the middle of something that's gone wrong and something's been detained, and it's the client saying, I thought that I had exercised reasonable care. How did this go wrong? What should I have done then to avoid this? What can you say would be like best practices, key steps then?
Mm-hmm. So first of all, you need to stay informed. You need to stay sharp. You keep your knowledge fresh. Oh, yeah. So we talked about this in our last podcast. You need to engage with your respective trade community. Maybe subscribe to some trade publications. Those can help you stay ahead of, the rest of your peers. You keep your knowledge fresh. That's key. And then you also need to keep a good records. That is the instrumental part in the reasonable care. Mm-hmm. You need to keep the records clean accurate and complete. What I mean when I say complete is, for example, you have a question with regard your goods classification. You called, hey, like Kerry, I call you today because I have these questions regarding the classification. I have and this proposed classification. What do you think? And we discuss this over the phone. But what you really need to do is after the call, you need to let Kerry know, hey, Kerry, could you send me an email to recap what we discussed over the call so I can have a records of it? Mm-hmm. So in that way, in the future, when CBB come to you, say, hey, like you did a classification wrong, and you can say, hey, but I demonstrate the reasonable care because I engage Kerry, a trade attorney, to help me with the classification. Mm-hmm. And that's an example of demonstrating reasonable care.
It's called cover your butt. But all the data is essential. And I'm talking about, again, mitigating strategies. Here's the things that we can prove in this timeline that our client did to exercise reasonable care. Now, there's another thing that comes into my mind, and man, we do this all the time, and it's getting with the company and tailoring an actual manual.
Absolutely. That is also, I'm glad, Bobby, you mentioned it. That is very important as well. We really recommend importers to develop a robust import compliance program, or we sometimes call it import compliance manual. Mm-hmm. So this manual should be a living document where you're actively using it all the time and you refer to it all the time and you're constantly updating it. So every organization who are involved in trade activities should be able to refer to the manual if they have some issues, and they would be able to handle the situation after reading the manual. So it should be a document that actually put into use. It has to include some key components, such as identify the responsible parties, like the risky areas, the escalation process, and sometimes you even need to include a step-by-step guide on some specific tasks, such as how to classify goods, how to evaluate the goods. So those things should be, and also another piece we talk about, the record-keeping procedures. You need to elaborate that in the manual. Yeah. So that should be a living document and should not be a book of international trade laws and regulations. It should be like a cookbook that you refer to all the time.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. My experience has been a lot of the time we start delving into this and looking at what happened, and it was some of the basic data that was just missing, wasn't there, or was done incorrectly. I mean, these simple things that well, how does an international trade law firm help us then? That kind of thing. Well, it's kind of holding your hand in a way. The manual is one aspect of it, but the other thing that we can do, we've been down this road many, many times where we go back and say, at this juncture, would you like us to put a manual together? Rubber stamped by the executive committee, but specific to your business, so this doesn't happen again.
Yeah, and another part in the manual is we help you to identify the key departments within the organization, and how they can work together. So to support the trade compliance, you need to involve multiple departments within the organization. For example, when you decide a classification, you want to get the products people. You want to call the engineers to get the details of the products. When you want to discuss evaluation issues, you may need to involve the tax people because they know if there is a transfer pricing agreement, if we need something from them to determine if there is a related party transaction analysis needed. And you also need to engage logistics. You also need to engage in purchasing because you need to teach them how to apply the Incoterms correctly and how to use them in a way that is in favor of your organization. So it's really, it's a very good manual should include, how, the different departments within an organization to work to collab together to support the trade compliance.
And I think, I've been around the block a little while with Braumiller Law Group. I'm old, about 20 years. But I tell you what, one of the things that I look at overall, too, is when we delve into this, had we just done a statistical sample, had we just gone in and audited, just for the heck of it, you get a third party like us involved, maybe even with the consulting side of things, and we extract that and we take a look at it just to be proactive. There's some things, there's some things there too that definitely.
It's definitely proactive is a key. It's sometimes, people think us as added expense. Right? They come to us when they got into the trouble.
Right. We put out fires. I always say that for a living. We do.
But however, it is, if you involved us from the early stage, these things can be very different. And we kind of just clear the blocks for your success.
Yep. I mean, hey, you bring that up about the added expense. I mean, compare us to the DC firms. Great rate. Same knowledge. But hey, the things that I've seen, and I've been on enough, I can call it this juncture, to know that these minor things have caused such astronomical damage. It could have been avoided, kind of thing. And then obviously, that's a lot of times where this is, look, let's get this down in writing. Let's put the manual together. How long does it take to do that, though? Give me the process and the timeline. I want to do a manual. I want this to never happen again. Can you give me? I call you up. Let's go.
I can't give you a process of what it looks like.
Yeah.
But it's really, as I said, it's like a tailored manual. We know the law, but we really need to know your business.
Okay.
We really need to know your activities. What are you doing? Where are you importing from? And what are you importing? So we usually start with assessment and interview to understand you.
A site visit. Go out to we'll show up at your factory or in your office. Yeah.
That may be required in some cases if it's a simple, the activity is not like huge value. That is not a mandatory step to do the site visit. But we definitely need to understand your business, and then we we identify the area that can be potential pitfalls for your business.
Right.
And then we just prepare it and we understand your organization, how they work together, and we prepare this menu that tailor for you, that everyone that in your organization involving trade activity can refer to all the time.
Well, so I've got all of my ducks in a row then. I mean, all this, I think about the timeline with all of the communication that I've had with my firm and my broker, and, me being the importer of record and the responsibility lying on me. Because a lot of times, and I said this in the last part, we have trouble sometimes identifying the importer of record because it changed hands so many different times. We've identified this and basically the manual say this is how it works in the future to avoid this. Trust your partners, obviously, too. But trust us as we have the timeline with you, then if anything does happen. We've worked through with CBP many, 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 many times to prove that, these steps were actually taken. And it goes a long way. Yes, and it goes a long way with customs saying, okay, you know what? It doesn't look anything near negligence to us. We agree.
Yeah, you would never want to get close to that.
Exactly. But it helps, was what I'm saying with the mitigation strategies, to prove that, we agree. You did your due diligence in this case. It happened because of this, and a lot of times you may not have to pay the penalty or the fine. But man, just being able to show them that manual in the future, so we even paid to have this done to make sure.
Yeah. Another thing, manual is very crucial. Mm-hmm. We talked about it. And also, there are some resources where you can utilize. So CBP published many rulings on various subjects like classification, valuation. So if you have certain uncertainty about like any issues within your business, you can refer to CBP's ruling database, which we call the CBP cross ruling database. Mm-hmm. So you can look up the goods that are similar to yours and to see if there are precedent guidance from CBP that you can rely on. So relying on a ruling is definitely a demonstration of reasonable care.
Wow.
And that another thing is just to engage a trade expert.
Great. Well, as you know, Kerry, I like to keep these at around 15 minutes.
Absolutely, Bob.
Appreciate you stopping by.
Appreciate you.
Back on your way to LA today?
Yeah.
All right. Well, Kerry will be back in town again. We're doing this broadcast out of Dallas in our studio here, so we'll be back maybe next month. We could come up with another one. All right. See you later, everybody. Thanks for stopping by.
See you later.
Relax. We've got you covered. Global trade compliance to us is just another day at the beach.